Hello, I'm Jeremy Auldaney, and we're continuing our Bible study. This is program number 2, and we're starting with the study of the Bible and science, showing the facts that is found out in the world as well as the facts found in the Bible, how they confirm each other, and how to get away from speculation. The Bible is the key to all knowledge, both secular as well as religious. Now we're starting with today we're going on to chapter 4 in Genesis, and we'll start with verse 7. I'm only going to cover things that I have encountered which are significant. If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? Now this is God talking to Cain when he had brought a sacrifice. If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. What that's referring to is that Cain brought a sacrifice of his corn because he was a farmer. Now Abel brought a lamb from his flocks. This of course symbolized the sacrifice of Jesus as the lamb. And they were asked to bring something that could be sacrificed, something that would shed blood. But Cain, instead, being proud, he didn't want to go to his brother and get a lamb out of his flock. He wanted to bring something of his own works. This illustrates how man tries to achieve salvation through works rather than obeying God. And it says that if you do well, God says, then everything will be fine. But if it does not do well, then you will encounter sin. You'll become jealous and angry, which is what happened to Cain. Now it says that sin lieth at the door. In other words, this attitude he had would lead to him doing evil things, such as stealing, lying, and murder. And it says, and unto thee shall be the desire, and thou shalt rule over him. That's referring to sin, that he would become a slave of sin. He would be doing things which seemed good to him, which he did out of anger or whatever he felt like doing at the time, and it led to evil. Now here's continuing chapter 4 on verse 15. And the Lord said unto him, therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. A lot of people say, well, and logically you think, what's God doing? Is he allowing Cain to get away with sin, the murdering of his brother? But you realize that later on it says here, way over here, oftentimes the Bible sheds light on itself, where it talks about something and then it has a reference elsewhere. Now here it says in Romans chapter 5, verse 12. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. 13. And for unto the law sin was in the world. But sin is not imparted when there is no law. In other words, it's sort of like in a western town where there's no sheriff, there's no law, then people just do as they please, whether it's good or bad, which causes shootings and killings and gambling and carousing and destroying and stealing, and it causes disorder in society. But there's no law to stop it. Now the law came when Moses was given the law by God in order to establish order. But this did not give man the ability to obey the law. That was to do that, you needed the Savior. You needed the Messiah. And that wouldn't come till the New Testament. So God had to make a temporary arrangement. That was what Paul said, that that means that there was no law at that time. And also, God didn't want to kill Cain because he wanted him to learn a lesson and possibly to change, to accept God's way. Now we go on, therefore, whoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. He also wanted Cain to learn a lesson. He also wanted people to learn a lesson to show what would become of Cain. He murdered his brother and got away with it. And they say, well, gee, why not? If he got away with it, so can I. So God wanted to show that that's not going to work. It's going to cause disorder and trouble in society. And going to verse 17, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch, and builded a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. Now I saw something on the Yahoo questions where somebody asked about Enoch, and somebody said, well, later on, this same Enoch would be raptured, taken to heaven because he was perfect. They don't realize, no, this is of the lineage of Cain. The lineage of Cain was the lineage of the serpent. There were two lineages, the good lineage and the evil lineage. The good, perfect lineage would be the one that would lead to the Messiah. This was another Enoch. There were two Enochs. One was of the evil race of Cain. The other was of the lineage of Seth, who hasn't been born yet, as far as our Bible study is concerned. Now, verse 22 of chapter 4, and Zillah also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. And Lamech said unto his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech, hearken unto my speech, for I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. He had killed a young man in a drunken brawl because he had gotten angry. But his reaction, instead of being sorry for what he did, instead he said, well, if Cain can get away with it, I should be able to get away with it even more. Cain shall be avenged sevenfold. Lamech would be 77-fold. In other words, I can get away with murder. But once again, the law hadn't been administered yet, so evil was rampant and getting worse. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth, for God said, and she said, God hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. What she was saying is that she expected Cain to be the Messiah, or the lineage of the Messiah. But instead, he turned out to be a murderer. And when Abel came along, he was of the seed of the Savior, but he was killed by Satan's seed of the serpent, which was Cain. And he killed him under direction of Satan, because that way Satan could cut off the lineage of the Messiah and replace it with the Antichrist. And hath appointed another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew, because that disqualified Abel because he was dead, and Cain because he was evil. And also, he may have, later on, his lineage mixes with the fallen angels, which became the Nephilim, the seed of the serpent. And Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos, and there began men to call upon the name of the Lord. You notice that Cain's lineage was not calling upon the Lord, they were murdering people. from the beginning of that lineage to the end, it ended up in a murder by Lamech. Now, we'll go on to chapter 5, verse 3. And Adam lived 130 years, and that's when he had a son in his own likeness, after his image, called his name Seth. And the days of Adam, after he begat Seth, were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. Some people ask, well, how did Cain get his wife? But in those days, you see, the genetic structure had not been damaged. There were no mutations, and it was perfect, and you could marry your sister without creating genetic defects. And also, the law hadn't been administered either. So there was no rule against it at that time. Today, we don't do that, and it's become a rule because of the genetic defects, such as hemophilia and so forth. That's why the rulers of countries have intermarried in order to keep their royal line within their own family for various reasons, including the fact that some of them are Nephilim, which will lead to the Antichrist, and Satan wanted to keep their lineage perfect for the Antichrist to come. And so they have produced defects like hemophilia. And after he had begotten Seth, there were 800 years. That people in those days lived a long time because of the what is called the canopy. It was a radiation shield around the earth. We don't know exactly scientifically how it could come about, and there are a lot of creation scientists who claim that they can't figure it out. But we do know from the fossil record, from geology, and from the Bible that there was definitely something different about the atmosphere of the earth, which created a higher oxygen pressure. And this has also been proven by scientists. Secular scientists have found in amber that the oxygen pressure was higher, as also the carbon dioxide, which causes plants to grow in vast amounts, and animals would grow, and there would be more variety, and they would grow larger and live longer. And there was also the soil itself had not been leached by the Noachian flood or by continual use, and so it was pristine and had a lot of minerals in it that are not there now, and the plants had more vitamins in them, so that when a person ate a plant, it was the equivalent of eating a steak. That was why it wasn't until later that God allowed them to eat meat, because of the depletion of the soil, which is referred to as a curse on the earth. And Adam lived 930 years. Now this was common because there was more oxygen, more CO2, and also greater oxygen pressure, and also the radiation was screened out of cosmic rays, and also the ultraviolet, which causes mutations and damages the genetic structure, such as cosmic rays do that. Also, there was no radiation from volcanoes, because volcanoes and earthquakes hadn't occurred yet until the flood disrupted the surface of the earth. Now, Genesis chapter 6, 1. And it came to pass, when man began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took wives of all which they chose. And there were giants in the earth in those days. And after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth. What this is referring to when it says the sons of God is a Hebrew way of explaining that these were created beings. Whenever the Bible refers to sons of God, it means that they were directly created by God himself. Now, the Adam was a son of God because he was directly created. These beings, these are the sons of God, plural, is a reference to angels. Angels were created males, so they had no girlfriends. So the evil angels decided to become carnal and forget their first estate in heaven and their duties and things that they should be thinking about, but they decided to have offspring from women. And also, Satan sent them. They were the fallen angels. Satan sent them to corrupt the lineage of the Messiah. And this lineage that they corrupted, of course, was the lineage of Cain, which came down to Tubal-Cain and others. This lineage comes all the way from Adam all the way to our present day, through Nimrod right after the flood. You've heard about that, but that'll be talked about later on. And it says, these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations. That means that his lineage, through Seth, down to Abraham, to Jesus, was perfect in that it had not mixed with the Nephilim bloodline of Cain, through Nimrod and Semiramis of Babel, which is another name for Babylon. The earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. Sounds a lot like today, where we have war and terrorism, filled with violence. There was killing, stealing, wars against one people group against another. Verse 13, and God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, through the seed of the Nephilim from Cain, the seed of the serpent. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Also, some of the lineage of Seth was beginning to mix with the Nephilim. But the lineage that is mentioned here in the Bible, that goes all the way from Seth to Abraham, did not mix with the Nephilim bloodline. If it had, it would have destroyed the coming of the Messiah, the Savior. We would have ended up with nothing but an Antichrist. The Antichrist will be a descendant of these Nephilim from Cain through Nimrod. Nimrod was the first Antichrist after the flood. And verse 14, make thee an ark of gopher wood. Gopher wood, Dr. Carl Baugh and others have decided, or they have discovered through their research, that gopher wood is probably not a tree, but is rather a process. They take wood and they compress it. Now, compressed wood can be stronger than metal, and it is also flexible. It doesn't break like metal. And it says that the weapons in the last days will be gathered together in Israel, and they will be burned for 7 years. Many prophecy researchers have said that they believe this is probably the weapons that they will use when Russia comes down on Israel. And they'll burn them for 7 years because they burn like coal. They burn, it's very hard to burn compressed wood, and it burns, when it does burn, it burns very slowly. You'll make the ark with gopher wood, rooms thou shalt make in it. Also the gopher wood compression would also produce it like, it would be like it was fossilized, which means it would also preserve it, and that's why it's still on Mount Ararat. But it won't be found until God allows it to be. Just like no one has actually found proof that dinosaurs and humans coexisted, that is absolutely irrefutable. There is a lot of evidence that we believe proves that, but we can't prove it absolutely, especially to a skeptic. But when we can prove it with absolute, irrefutable evidence, that's when it will be revealed. To make an ark, and shall pitch it within and without. Now, pitch, some people have argued that pitch is asphalt that was formed during the flood from compression of fossils. They believe it's the diatomite in L.A. County in the what is called Miocene. The evaporation of oil produces asphalt, and so they say, well, there was no asphalt at that time. And even some secular scientists have said, you see, the Bible can't be true. But what it's referring to is pitch. Pitch can also be sap of trees. And this fashion which thou shalt make of it, the length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, and the breadth 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. Now, I have a friend who told me, he says, well, the Noah's Ark had to be the size of the state of Texas in order to have all the animals on it. That's a little bit like saying the San Diego Zoo or the LA Zoo would have to be the size of California in order to have all the animals they have there. For one thing, a lot of the different, like the different dog breeds, the different cat breeds, you see, many of these have been bred by man, creating different hybrids. There was only 2 cats, 2 dogs. And they were juveniles, and also they probably hibernated during this time. Let's go back to and it was also, the ark had to have been gigantic in order to hold all these animals, they say. Okay, now what is these measurements in cubits? If you change the cubits into feet, it would be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high, and it would be 3 stories. 450 feet long and 75 feet wide is almost identical to the size of a football field. That means that they had as much cubic feet as a football field 3 times. That would be plenty of room for all the animals. Now, another thing that they bring up, critics bring up, is how did he go to all the different continents and collect all these different animals? How would he know if he got all of them? It doesn't say he did this. God says that he brought them to the ark to save them. He didn't go out and collect them. All he did was open the door and say, in you go. God selected them. And on verse 16, a window thou shalt make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. It was just about 1.5 foot square, sort of like a skylight. A very small skylight, and it was up in the roof. And that's why he couldn't see whether there was land out there, and he had to release birds to determine if the water had receded enough for them to come out of the ark. They picture the ark with giraffes sticking their heads out and such as that, and elephants and all, and a little bathtub type of thing. This is deliberate falsification of information. They're trying to make it look like a myth. There were no windows. The animals didn't stick their heads out, and furthermore, they weren't adults. And it included dinosaurs. Every kind of animal that was created at the time of Creation Week. Dinosaurs were created on day 6, by the way. Same as man. And a lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. Now, verse 20, here it confirms that. Of fowls after their kind, of cattle after their kind. That included dinosaurs, because he created them among the cattle, because at this time they ate plants. But, of course, when the fall occurred, after they were chased out of Eden, or put out of Eden, then some of the dinosaurs started eating flesh, such as the T-Rexes and other theropods. And of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind. 2 of every sort shall come unto thee to keep them alive. Well, we'll end here because this is 4, 5, and 6. And next time we'll start with chapter 7. I'm almost through the Bible now. I'm back here almost to Revelation. And what I do is I have a Bible study every morning, and I read 3 chapters, and you can read the whole Bible if you read 3 chapters every day. And anytime I see something significant or that I want to comment on or look up later, like I'm doing right now, and I'm reading my underlined sections that hit me as significant, and that's how I study the Bible. Thank you, and see you next time.